Awesome. So, as I mentioned, my name is Hilary Flint, Director of Communications and Community Engagement at BC and I'm a Beaver County resident who has been affected by the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. So, this topic is, near and dear to my heart. I, have essentially lost my home to invisible chemicals last year. And so now I'm dedicated to educating people about the harms of petrochemicals and how they're transported. So today we're going to highlight the rail industry in the Ohio River Valley and what actions we can take to encourage regulations that would protect the health and safety of families right here in Beaver County. So I am going to introduce Leslie and Saul, who are going to start us off today. Leslie is an artist, photographer, and a community advocate in Pittsburgh. And for the last several years, she has worked to create awareness on the drastic increase in freight safety thanks to Norfolk Southern's Pittsburgh line, which of course runs through Beaver County as well. So Leslie, I am going to start sharing your presentation if that's okay.
Okay. Is my volume okay for everybody?
I think so. Sounds good to me.
Good. Okay. Um, where's our screen? This is a shorter version of a presentation we did focused on the increase in rail traffic in Pittsburgh. Um, and can we get that to a full screen view, Hillary, if it's possible?
Yes, one moment.
Yeah, I know you've got to let some people in too.
All right. This might be the best I can do, but I'm working on it.
Let's see.
All right. Is that okay, Leslie? Can you see that?
Yeah. Um, and then a full screen and then a slide. Yeah. And then on just on slideshow, if you can. Um,
All good?
Thank you. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Oh, there we go.
first
Now we're
time
cooking
using
with
Google
gas.
Slides,
Perfect.
everyone. Sorry about that.
I know. It's actually kind of great, and I refuse to pay Adobe. So this is why we're doing this.
I hear that.
Um,
Well, over to you, Leslie. It's all
so
yours.
thank you. So thanks everybody for being here. Railroaded, we're calling it this. Well, I want to say railroads are essential, and we know this, but they also have a lot of issues and they're a little hard to see. And we started looking at this in terms of Pittsburgh because through Pittsburgh, we're going to get more than double the train traffic through the center of town in a couple of years, courtesy of Norfolk Southern. And so starting to look at what that means and then realizing every railroad community is facing the same stuff, even if they're not facing twice as much traffic. So this is how this started. Um, and I want to introduce us here. Saul, who works with me, is Saul's a grad student at Carnegie Mellon, and he is in public policy. And he created an amazing map. This is technology he uses for his work at CMU, and that helps us see and show to you the just exactly how many people are affected by railroads. And my name is Leslie Clague, and I live in Polish Hill, and working with the group here to create awareness about this. So that's who's talking to you. Next slide. Thank you. So I'm going to shift to mine. Um, so this is a national rail network map, very dimly in the background, but I'm starting these quotes because they really tell the story here. This country depends on the freight railroads, and there are four companies, huge companies. Their profits are in the billions. And on this side of the Mississippi River, it's Norfolk Southern and CSX in both Beaver County and us here in Allegheny County. Those are the two who are carrying a lot of stuff that we want to keep an eye on. And there's this quote from Glenn at Rail Pollution Protection Pittsburgh. Glenn is good at laying the facts out, so I just took his words directly. It's the longest national rail network in the world. And this is the increase in tonnage is going to be considerable part of what we're looking for here in Pittsburgh. Twice as much traffic. That's going to be, in a lot of places. And also, as Glenn says, maintaining this integrity of this structure is critical. And right now, the railroads are doing that. And a lot of us don't feel they're really up to that job. So, next slide. Thank you. I just wanted to give you a closer look. This is the U.S. National Rail Network. So dark blue is Union Pacific. And excuse me, let me get my notes here. BNSF is the orange line, and then in the east, CSX is the green, Norfolk Southern is the black. And you see the density in our part of the country. Can we have the next slide, please? Excuse me. Why that's taking longer to load. Well, we've got some people coming in, so maybe we have a moment for them to get added while we're waiting for the next slide. There we go. So I'm zooming in. You might notice this is not enough to see in great detail, but this is Pennsylvania. I'm showing you this because Pennsylvania is among the 4 states with the most railroad tracks. And top 4 are Texas, Illinois, Ohio, and PA. And of course, these railroads have been part of life here in this part of the country since 1851. The city, Pittsburgh, grew up around these tracks and these other towns. And at that time, of course, railroads moved timber and goods and people. These same rail lines, the freight lines, now carry crude oil, liquid petroleum gas, and other hazardous materials. And dozens of these trains pass through our communities each week. Next slide. Thank you. So I wanted to just show you all the relationship, Beaver County and Allegheny County, our relationship to the railroads. We are the same 2 railroads. In this map, Norfolk Southern is that bright blue, and CSX is the yellow. CSX seems to be the railroad that is often the one going to the large industrial facilities. CSX is the one taking byproducts away from Clairton Coat Works. It's the one taking stuff away from the Shell plant. But CSX and Norfolk Southern carry each other's stuff all the time. So I'm not really going to separate out too much, focusing on one or the other. Both of these are a concern, and the lines often mirror each other, travel next to each other. And you'll notice also Amtrak there, that red line going through as well. Can I have the next slide, Hillary? And then focusing even closer, so Beaver County, this is what you guys have. And that upper Norfolk Southern line, of course, is the one coming from Ohio where the derailment was last year. And that line travels down through Beaver County and then comes down into Pittsburgh. And then you have another line out Midland towards East Liverpool. And of course, the CSX line's running through this as well in the yellow. Beaver County is a railroad county for sure, particularly in this section with your large facilities. And later on, Saul is going to highlight those on the map a bit. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So, impacts of railroads, and there are a lot. So I compacted these together pretty tightly on this list. The thing about railroad impacts is they tend to be concentrated within about a mile of railroads. So people living near the tracks, like a lot of you in Beaver County, a lot of us here in Allegheny County, we're getting all these impacts. Just the noise, your house is shaking. That's putting stress on things. Vibration is a big problem here in Pittsburgh because our buildings and infrastructure is so old. And that vibration from rail traffic is putting additional stress on them, and the weight as well is a problem. Pollution, air and water, rail crossings and bridges, and derailments. And I want to get into each of these in a more detailed way. Can Can we have the next slide, Hilary? So traffic noise, there's a fantastic article in the New York Times last year, sort of study, and I've just pulled out some of their quotes here, and I'm just going to go over these quickly. And talking about decibels, one thing they noticed is that sound issues tend to be logarithmic. I had to look for that word, not linear. So with every 10 decibel increase, the sound of loudness to your ear doubles. And that means that regular exposure to even a little more noise can trigger reactions that are harmful to health. Now, according to the World Health Organization, average road traffic above 53 or average air quality noise above about 45 decibels are associated with adverse health effects. Sorry about the tone, that's the people coming in. So all of these issues, and these created levels of stress in the body, which anticipated cardiac events and so on. And the last point on here I really want to emphasize, in a Swiss study, the higher degrees of nighttime noise intermediacy, sporadic noise, such as a train going by, those were associated. That specific thing, the quality of it, it's quiet, then it's loud. That quality stresses your body. And I want to note this: Norfolk Southern, in justifying our train addition in traffic, assured everyone that it wouldn't be any louder. Averaged over the course of 24 hours, it was barely even louder when they added double stack trains. But that erases the damaging point here, is that the sporadic quality of these sounds, airplanes going over, trains going by, these are huge stress on the body. Can I have the next slide, please? Pollution. So I need more information on this, but I've heard that the exhaust from trains tends to stay more in that zone around the tracks. Highway pollution and air can be moved away faster, go over a further distance. But I will admit I need more information on that point. But diesel pollution, they are so tiny. When you breathe them in, they go right into your bloodstream. Unlike, say, coal dust, which accumulates in your lungs and you hack it up or whatever. But the diesel pollution goes directly into the bloodstream. And health patterns with that are well established. Black carbon and greenhouse gases. And in Pittsburgh right now, on the Pittsburgh line, we get about 19 trains a day. When you start to equate that to what the equivalent of diesel buses is, and then you look at the increase, and then I think of the Conway yard and how many trains the people who live near there are dealing with. Convert it into diesel buses, it starts to put it into proportion. And the impact, the pollution is worse when trains sit and idle. And they do this at Conway. They do this outside of Conway. They're waiting to enter the yards. They do this in Pittsburgh. Anywhere if a train is idling for an hour, they've loaded up, the atmosphere around you with pollution. May I have the next slide? Hmm. I guess I have a lot of pixels in that image. Okay, so rail crossings, I have conflated two very different important things here, just to save slides. But rail crossings, I know, is a big problem for you all in Beaver County. There are situations, and this has happened all over the country, where stopped trains end up blocking people in their communities or prevent them from getting to their homes or workplaces. There's a development in Beaver County, and the people have been trapped or in there for up to 6 hours because trains are sitting there waiting to go into Conway, and the trains are so long they have to stop outside the rail yard to wait, and that affects the communities all around the rail yard. The rail crossings also in many places, and this is nationwide, are often laughing gates. The image here is an image from Darlington, where the trains come in into PA from East Palestine, Ohio. And although there is a sign and a light there, there's no gate. And these unsecured crossings have been the cause of a lot of accidents. There's a bad one in Harmer, PA, a year or two ago. So those are issues. And another issue, bridges. Glenn at Rail Pollution Protection Pittsburgh has stated a number of times bridges are the most vulnerable, I beg your pardon, part of a rail network. And as everyone knows, a lot of our bridges in PA are in awful shape. And what the railroads have tended to do is let them deteriorate, do the minimum, and at some point something has to happen and the state has to come in and help. And that's happened over and over. And in other cases where the state or someone else owns it, stuff can get fixed. But the railroads themselves are saving money in this regard. Next slide. So derailments, super common, super common, about 3 a day. And the second statistic is actually from Fractracker's report. They looked at the tri-state area. In less than 3.5 years, there were 742 rail incidents in this tri-state area. In just our region, 270 derailment accidents in the 10 years between 2011 and 2022. And most of those were near a major river because most of the railroads are near major rivers in Pennsylvania. And I should look back and mention this is the fact that so many railroads are near major rivers in PA means that railroads also have passive pollution, which is making its way into our water sources. Even if the railroads are running perfectly, they're leaching things just by the normal operation. I want to note this photo here is from a derailment in Pittsburgh Station Square in 2018. Double stacked trains tumbled off Norfolk Southern's Fort Lane line and fell down onto the T line below. And people generally thought this was kind of funny because the boxcars had things like mouthwash and paper towels and stuff like that. But the T line is a commuter line. It was on a Sunday, thank goodness. But that line where those cars fell down is where the commuters come by in on the weekdays. So this could have been very, very bad. And thankfully it was not. Next slide, please. And Saul, you're going to be coming up soon. And this is a point all of us working on this, and any of us who live near a railroad should be very well aware of. What happened in East Palestine could happen here in Pittsburgh. It could happen anywhere in Beaver County. Because, in that case, and in the Station Square case, these were, Station Square was a rail was broken. It's an equipment or maintenance issue. In East Palestine, it was a bearing failed. Railroads are cutting corners. Norfolk Southern is famous for this. Safety, maintenance, staffing, everything. They're doing everything they can to cut corners. It is all about the bottom line, and that is the priority. Railroads also right now don't have accountability for what trains are carrying or where they're going. And they say that they need to be secretive. This has been the talk since the 90s. We can't tell people what's on the trains because then terrorists will know. Well, I'm a middle-aged lady and an artist sitting in a house, and I do community work, and it was easy for me to figure out where the tracks are and what these trains are carrying. So terrorists who have even more spare time to research have no problem. This is BS. Another reason why they need to be more public is that first responders need to know what materials are on these trains. In East Palestine, they did not have enough information right away. And when the local officials agreed to let Norfolk Southern burn off those tankers, local officials did not have enough information to make that decision in a good way. So these are all factors in what happened, and that's why anyone near a railroad is at risk for this sort of thing. This kind of equipment failures, it's just happenstance where things fail. Next slide. Where are we? Hey, Saul, you're up to bat. Are you ready?
Sounds good. Yeah, no, I'm ready.
Okay, Saul's gonna share his screen, I think. And then after this, Hilary, we're gonna jump back to my thing.
You got it. All right, Saul, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to drag over. Not this one. Sorry, one moment. There we go. Okay, so can everyone see this?
Yep, looks good.
This sounds good. This is just a visual aid to go along with the presentation. This is a public resource, and I'm going to be sharing the link for this presentation afterwards. This is a ArcGIS story map. So what I've done is I've compiled 5 maps, and they're all interactive. And then participants from here, if they'd like afterwards, they can go through and actually look at some of the data that we've collected. So this first map is just to get us situated. We're looking at the Beaver County border, and we're looking at the municipalities within southwestern Pennsylvania. Users can zoom in or zoom out to get themselves situated. As you zoom in, you'll actually see the names of the municipalities pop up. The top left, there's a search bar. You can type in your home address, any location that you want, and you can see where you are. And then this is a legend in the bottom left corner, and this will be present throughout every map that I go through. So if you ever need some clarification about what you're looking at, you can see that the thin black lines, that's a state boundary. Very thick black line, that's Beaver County. Other counties, thin black line, then municipalities is gray line. And this will be the same throughout the maps. So now viewers can still zoom in and see the municipality divisions, but I've just taken them away at this scale to reduce clutter. This has the same features as last time, but now we've added rails. This goes for not just southwestern Pennsylvania, but actually West Virginia, Ohio. Sorry, one second, it's loading. Ohio, West Virginia, and Maryland. And then as you zoom in, like I said, you can see the municipal boundaries. This next slide has all the same features as before, but now we have markers for Shell Plastics, Styropec, Beaver Valley Power Station, the nuclear power plant, and Valspar. And we also have gray transparent polygons. So worth noting, if you click on any shape within these maps, you can get some information on them. So for example, I believe this is Shell Plastics. You can see the long name is Pennsylvania Shell Ethylene Cracker Plant. We call it Shell Plastics. You can get the latitude and longitude. There's also these industrial parks, which are transparent gray polygons. This is the Beaver Valley Industrial Park. There's one down here that's pretty active. This is the Aliquippa Industrial Park. So all of this is just the infrastructure, and we haven't looked at any actual health data yet, and that's coming right now. So this is for all 4 states that I mentioned: Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. Census level track asthma rates. Worth noting that what we're looking at is quintile. So all of the data that we're looking at for current asthma crude prevalence, it's binned by the lightest color is about 7.1% of that tract to about 9.7% of that tract has asthma. And then as you get darker and darker, so dark red is 12.1% to 20%, that tells you the crude prevalence of asthma within that tract. So as you can see, this is the Shell Plastics, the plant that we were looking at. Oh, sorry, this is Valspar. So within Valspar, the Valspar's plant, within this tract, you can click on it. You can go to this tract. It'll tell you the number of people who lack health insurance in the area. It'll also give you some other data, but you can look at county level information, what have you. There's a lot of feature layers going on here. So this is asthma. I'm now going to transition to cancer data, but worth keeping in mind that these are binned differently. Both use quintiles. So we've got, it looks like it's getting worse, but it's actually just showing you different data. Now this time when you look at the cancer, except skin cancer crude prevalence, the lowest bin is less than 1% to now 5.7%, and the largest bin has a pretty big range. This is from 8.3% cancer rate to 20.6%. The points for the industrial parks and the plants, they haven't loaded yet. They're still publishing, but this link will be up. Oh, there they are. Cool. Good timing. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this visual aid. But if you go to anything on this map and you click on it, for example, right here, This is it'll tell you the county that the train is going through, the rail operator right here. This is CSXT, the rail division name, Baltimore, and so on and so on. So this is meant to be a public resource moving forward as people are advocating for their communities. They can look around, they can see what's going on with the rail lines, what's going on with industrial parks in southwestern Pennsylvania. And that's it for now. If you have any questions, I think we're going to take them at the end, and I can stop sharing my screen.
Yes, thank you. Wow, what an incredible resource. Thank you for that.
Thank you,
Uh,
Saul. And we
wow.
have a little end bit to our presentation. How are you? Is Matt with you? Or do we need to keep going, or are we in good time,
Yep, we're
Hillary?
making good time. We'll have Matt go after
Okay.
you. And then I had to
Okay.
reload the file. So where would you like me to reload?
Um,
At risk?
the one after, yeah, the one after, yeah, who is at risk? So, 17 on my slide 17.
Great.
And it's what can we do?
All right. It's just taking a second. If you have it up on your computer, it might be
Yeah,
quicker.
sure. Um, I am not going to remember how to do this.
All right. That's okay. It
Um,
loaded. I got it.
it did, okay. I need to be more fleet-footed with the stuff. Um, ooh, free air monitoring. There's Mark Dixon has a good comment that would fit in here nicely, by the way. He mentioned free air monitoring. Um, oh hi, Yard Master at Conway. I want to visit Conway. Um, Okay, cool. I want an air monitor. All right, and then the next slide after this. So Saul talked about who is at risk, and this map that he is working on. We are just going to keep adding data, and so you know, anyone who is looking at this issue wants information can go and look at that and start to get a sense of what to do. So rail safety legislation, any action item has to start with this. They introduced it. It does not have the votes. And it needs them. They've had one hearing. There's different people from this region who have gone down there to show their concern. But this legislation actually probably it doesn't go far enough. Next slide. Thank you. This is I took this straight from Glenn at RP3. I kept paraphrasing and he says it so well. So this is pure rail pollution protection, but his points are good. The Safety Act, it doesn't actually do enough. It's a good starting point, and he's noted what it does do. And these are important. Inspection requirements, you know, right now they're not sufficient to inspect the cars. That's causing problems. Advance notice about, you know, it does some very important things. More money for the tank cars, fines for safety violations. This is all important, but there's more. And as he notes, it stops short of major regulatory changes. It leaves things to Federal Railroad Administration and DOT, Department of Transportation, and it's a watered down version of something two House Democrats, lowering the speed limits. Were things that should be in there. More sophisticated equipment on trains, broadening the definition of a high hazard train. Train that derailed in East Palestine was mixed freight, and a lot of these are, and you'll see, you know, tankers of, you know, probably corn or grain, and then you'll see scrap metal, and then there's liquid petroleum gas, and then there's an empty box car, and so you know, a train that has any percentage of hazardous material should be designated as such, and that is not the case at the moment. Next slide. And here's another thing to support green locomotives. The tier 4 locomotives they don't filter everything, but they filter a lot of the stuff. The older locomotives are terrible, and they tend to use those in the rail yards. And again, Conway Yards is a huge environmental issue. Anywhere around there, because that's, it's not just that the trains are idling; they're using these old locomotive things to move things around. So all of these issues with the pollution, with the rail yards, although trains only produce about 20% of our pollution in this region, a fifth, that's considerable, and they can be a lot better. And of course, in Europe, electrification has worked well, so that would be something to look forward. Because I keep wanting to return to this. Trains are not like plastics plants and things like that. We need them. We need them desperately, and they're not going away, and they're growing. So all of these things are essential, all these points to push on. Next slide. Something I heard a lot about at the Breathe Project meeting the other day, the importance of data. And it's such an advantage here in Pittsburgh. We have amazing research universities here, and a lot of people around who are already interested in looking at railroads, interested in looking at these things. A neat example, if you haven't seen it, Plume Pittsburgh, which is it's a website, a very simple app that combines data from wind direction, people self-reporting smelling something, and they can show you this nice visualization of where the pollution from these coke plants are going. It would be nice. We should get some eyes. You have eyes on Shell and their emissions. We need eyes on the rails as well. I would say eyes on Norfolk Southern, but it's not just Norfolk Southern. And I think this is super important now. Anybody, start noting what you see in the tankers. Start noticing, learn which rail lines are near you. I think all of us need to know more, because railroads, not so much in Beaver County, but in Pittsburgh, railroads kind of hide away in our little valleys, and people don't quite know where they are or what's what. And we all need to know more about that, shine a spotlight on them. Next slide. Is this it? Oh, this is my final slide. This is how you know what's in a tanker. There's a lot of kinds of rail cars. Tankers are the ones that are carrying the stuff that we are worried about, often to and from these large industrial facilities that we have. So when you're looking at trains, focus on the locomotives and the tankers are the bits that are really the most nerve-wracking. You can look up this number. I have this broken down here. All you have to do is Google UN space and whatever the number you see is, and you can find out in an instant what's inside that. I would be interested in starting, a number of interested observers start making notes where you see what, because it would be really nice in this region to start really paying attention to where the toxic stuff is going, is it going past here? I see stuff past my house all the time. I see vinyl chloride go by here in Pittsburgh all the time. That top right photo, that tanker, I don't know if you can see the number on there, 1075, liquefied petroleum gas all the time, hugely flammable. This would take out blocks and blocks if one of those derailed and exploded. So that's how you know what's in those tankers. And yeah, we're making people aware, and starting to connect us with these big facilities and maybe make these railroads safer. And that is our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Saul. I cannot wait to dig into this story map. That is an incredible resource. All right, I was just about to ask for questions. It looks like Terry's up first. Go ahead, Terry.
I'm old and I'm slow, so I wanted to ask, can you go back to that slide or explain it again as to what, I mean, I live spitting distance from the tracks, and I see tankers go by. I just know that they're tankers, but I have no idea what's in them. So you just
Yeah.
put UN and then the number.
Yeah. Those little signs are hard to see when you're at a distance, but it's that diamond shaped sign will be on the lower right, on the side, and you have to get yourself a little closer, but just that 4-digit number. And that's the
Well,
UN number.
I always see a number. I can usually, because I walk right by the railroad track.
Oh,
So I
perfect.
can see the number. And I mean, it's big enough to see. So I just go UN and write down the number.
Yeah. All you need to write down is that 4-digit number. You can make a
Oh.
little note. Make a little note when you're out walking, and when you head back home, sit down on the computer.
And just
Yeah.
write the number down and Google it.
All you need is that 4-digit number. That's all you need to look up, and you can go home and Google UN and the 4 digits.
Okay. And all right.
Yeah. It'll come right up.
I'm
And you can
assuming,
also go on Wikipedia, and there's these long lists of all the UN numbers. There's hundreds or thousands. If you want to see all the vast long lists, but we see the same ones over and over.
Oh, that's the right one. There's where you raise your hand.
okay, I'm assuming you're going to talk about at some point what we can do to stop the monster railroad known as Norfolk Southern.
Well, I don't know if there's stopping them, but I one of my first things is, first of all, don't let them do things on the quiet and all hiding and out of sight, which is what they like the public not to quite notice. And I think the very first thing is everybody be noticing them, put the spotlight on them, point them out, and constantly question, because they're making so much money, and these impacts have vast costs. I mean, this increase of traffic through Pittsburgh is going through our most developed areas and all this, and it's a huge quality of life issue. So I don't know.
And there will
Sorry.
be an accident at some point in a very dense area.
Yes,
There just has to be.
I agree. Yes, yes, unfortunately. Saul,
Yeah, so I know the last meeting that we spoke at, Glenn was talking about the Railway Safety Act. Do we have any information for that? I can also drop a link in the chat for more information on that.
yeah, there hasn't been another hearing. It's sort of stuck. So the more our reps hear that people want that, and that is Terry, that's a huge action item. Bug the heck out of your reps. We need that Railway Safety Act, and it needs to go further. That is absolutely an action item. And I apologize, I didn't look up the Beaver County reps. I should have done that before this, but you probably know them.
What's the number again on that, the Railroad Safety Act?
It's S576. I put a link in the chat. It looks like Phoebe's also putting some information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Just to add some context to what Leslie was saying, if we raise enough awareness around this and we call our state reps, and they pass the Railway Safety Act, it would actually hold rail lines more accountable. So there is a way to at least curb what they're doing, not stop them altogether, as Leslie said, but make them more accountable. Yeah.
The increase in traffic is coming. It just is.
Thank you. Yes, and I am happy to announce that Food and Water Watch, which is an org that has they do a lot of work in the area. They're going to have a message action posted next week, and that will allow us to directly contact our legislators to advocate for the Railway Safety Act. So as soon as we have that, I will be sure to make sure it gets out to people via email and on BCMAC social media. And there's going to be a group of residents from East Palestine and Beaver County going down to DC to have these conversations too. So
I'd like to do, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I see I have 3 hands up. I would really love to hear from Dave. I know Dave had mentioned he worked on the railroads. Dave, what's your question?
Yes.
Yeah, I was the yard master. The problem here is they're running the trains entirely too long. They do not have enough people working to maintain the equipment properly, and you just lose one of the dedicated people that are working. They get laid off. They go to another industry because who wants to work a job? Myself, it took me 25 years to get a job on daylight, and that was with Tuesday and Wednesday off. I mean, there's not a lot of people are going to put up with that unless, you have the company backing you up. that deal in East Palestine should have never happened. As soon as they knew that the temperature was increasing on those wheel bearings, they should have had the crew stop the train
Mhm.
and have the conductor walk back and inspect the train, even if it tied up the tracks for
Yeah.
2 hours. Anything would have been better than what happened.
Mhm.
And you never burn off any spilled material unless it's going to burn up
Yeah.
right away. Something like alcohol or something like that's going to burn and it'll be gone. That was stupid.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
Dave. And I think it came out
Yeah.
today, even NTSB Chair Homendy said that, this was avoidable. I know she had
Yeah.
said that before, but I think we have to keep telling everyone what happened there. It was an avoidable act. So thank you
Yeah.
for
They
everything.
conceded it wasn't necessary.
Yep. Thank you for your service, Dave. And, we need
Yeah.
more great rail advocates who know the business and know the ins and outs and can push for exactly what you said, because that's
Yeah.
what's going to keep us safe. So thank you, Dave. Dr. Lau, go ahead.
Yes, very good presentation there, Leslie and Saul.
Thank you.
Have a question that's come to me. Through our observations and our eyes on Shell, people report seeing blue smoke. And for a while, we thought they were burning something, but I've been able to trace it down and observe on the breathe cam. It's the train. And I hear the trains can make black smoke, white smoke, and blue smoke. And blue
Hmm.
smoke indicates burning oil. Now, I
Oh,
can
wow.
see that happening intermittently, but then I would think that Shell would want to fix it, but it continues on. Do you have any ideas about why the train, or is it just normal for a train working short distances in a rail yard that it keeps
Uh,
giving off blue
Well,
smoke?
as mentioned, they tend to use the old locomotives, the most polluting locomotives. They tend to use them in the rail yards, and they tend to use the newer ones that capture more of those particulates. Those are used more on the runs. So I think you're probably seeing these older locomotives that are just spewing out these particulates. And these things can stay in service for another 30 years. So that is a point of pressure for the railroads. Those old locomotives need to be retrofitted with scrubbers, which is possible, or taken out of service because, as you're saying, once that pollution is visible,
Yeah, does anybody uh, regulate that? Because I did report it to the DEP,
yeah.
and they told me that that wasn't their thing, that they only take care of pollution from stationary sources. And
Well, I
once
don't
it
know.
moves, that the
PA,
train would have been.
Pennsylvania, was it last year? Someone from Breathe will know. They just gave the states the right to regulate locomotive pollution. I want to say late last year or early this year, this just passed EPA. I can get more details on that, but that was something that just passed, and that is a huge weapon tool or whatever that maybe groups can start to use to pressure on that.
Yeah, if you can find
So
that out, let me know, because
yeah,
it's
yeah, it's
very
fairly
disturbing
recent
that this keeps
legislation.
going on.
Yes, yes, it is.
Thank you, Dr. Lau. All right, we have Bob Smetzer. Go ahead, Bob. And then after that, I know Gail wants to talk. I saw a physical hand. Go ahead, Bob.
Yes, President of the Council, we're always fielding questions from the citizens. And one of the things that came up yesterday was this brake shoe that fell off of a train. As you can
Wow.
see, the
Oh my
shoes,
God.
it's all rusted up. And there was all kinds of parts along the tracks. And, we're very concerned what kind of maintenance is being done on these trains as they come whipping through our town 50, 60 miles an hour. And, you look at, thank you very much for exposing all this, but those banners that you have on there, I know there's a chart that you could pull up and see what they're carrying,
Mhm.
but we're on CSX, And right now, I went down and inspected the tracks. They used to have wooden railroad uh, ties supporting the rails,
Yep.
and they came up with the idea of putting in the concrete ones. And the concrete ones didn't seem to give enough, and every one of them in town where I'm at are split right down the middle. They're all broken, and they're replacing them down in and around Aliquippa with wooden railroad ties. Now we have two crossings in our town. One is a tunnel that goes underneath the railroad tracks, and one is a bridge that goes over the railroad tracks. It's not a crossing where a car would physically be in the way of a train. Now, the tunnel that goes under the tracks, it's been neglected forever, and ceiling is falling down on vehicles. You can see the rusted beams and the hog rod inside there. There's icicles coming down through. So you know you have some little or no maintenance. We went down to the private crossing, which is a bridge, and took pictures, and it's all rusted at the bottom. And we looked at the top and the expansion joint between the bridge and the land is at a V. So it's not been maintained, being a private bridge. I'm not sure what Pennsylvania law is on bridge inspections. I know they're supposed to go every 2 years, but yeah, the town's very concerned. If we lose a train in this town, we have our 5 water wells that provide water for 4 communities, and it's right alongside the tracks. And also we have a pump house that takes our sewage uphill to a sewage treatment plant, which is right alongside the tracks. So that would knock out sewage and water for a couple communities if a train did derail there. So as you can see, with finding broken parts off of trains like the brakes and all the other metal parts that are falling off these trains, I think you've explained very well that they're doing little or no maintenance on these, because I've lived down here for 70 some years. I've never seen anything like this in all those years. They used to have railroad tracks alongside there where the hot cars would pull over and let them cool down. They did away with them. So I know that we're in trouble under the Obama administration. When those tanker cars went off the tracks, there was piping underneath. He insisted that they move the piping to the top of those rail cars. And of course, the railroads fought him on that because they said it was too expensive. But yet they would lose all their material when that tanker car would go off and hit that rock and bust off. I'm not quite sure how far along they've done on moving those piping from underneath that tanker car to the roof or the top of it. But that should also be observed. So those were my observations, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, I keep saying with trains, there truly are many paths. So infrastructure is the next rabbit hole I think we'll be diving into in the Breathe Collaborative Railroad call. So looking forward to learning more about that myself. Gail, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how, I can't get it to let me raise my hand. I don't know
Hey,
where
a
the
real hand is good enough for me.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the bipartisan act that was introduced by Chris DeLuzio. Now, Chris DeLuzio is a good friend of mine, and he's in my district, and I think he's also in Beaver County, and we're talking about federal. And he is not, when I discussed this with him, of course, he is very well aware that the act, while it is to some, it will have some help and put in some safety guards, does not go nearly far enough. But because it's bipartisan, he's got to deal with the Republicans that are in the House. The Senate, man, that's where it's stopping. And so that's bad. The other piece of that is that in our state house, We are in, and I don't know how far this extends into Beaver County. We're in I'm in the 44th district. I'm in Swickley. So I have tremendous concern for everybody involved here, but I see these trains on a daily basis right over the hill from where I live, going along Ohio River Boulevard. Well, all the, wealth in Swickley is just, we say, what would you do if anything happened? Oh, nothing will happen. And I live amongst a lot of Republicans, and they all feel that the present rep in the State House, this Valerie Gatos, they think she's, wonderful. In the meantime, she thinks Norfolk and Southern is wonderful. Well, she's coming up for reelection, and she's running against a terrific gal by the name of Hadley Haas, Haas. So we need to push for Hadley to get, to get elected and get rid of Valerie, because she is really not understanding. She just simply doesn't get it. She doesn't get the picture. So we need a lot of work there too. And we got to get the
Thank you,
votes.
Gail. And I think it
Yeah,
sounds like we need to get some advocates that were affected by the train derailment out to Swickley to talk to
Yes.
people and let them know that
I do. I am.
we
I mean,
didn't know this was going to happen either. So,
Right.
Gail,
We
you have-
could do this. We could do this too. We can do a presentation for your community group or the Republicans out there, Gail. I'm
I
happy to
had
talk to
Chris.
them.
Chris was
party.
here. I had Chris here, and now we're trying to plan, because I live in the Masonic Village. So that's a retirement community. All those people are voters. And we talk about marginalized folks.
Mhm.
The one group that is never, ever mentioned as marginalized are the elderly. And I'm one of them. And there are a lot of
Mhm.
elderly people here, just like me, who are very vital and very big voters and
Yes.
very powerful people. So
Yes.
we are trying to plan something with with Hadley and Chris speaking as we get
Mhm.
closer to the
Yeah.
the primary, and then the major, hello, when we're
Yeah.
voting.
well,
The
keep us
general.
informed, Gail.
Election's the word I
Yeah.
want. See, I'm just like Biden. I'm the same age.
Yeah.
So, not
Yeah.
quite.
Thank you,
Not
Gail,
quite.
and keep us informed. And it looks like we have time for one more question.
Thank you for listening.
You-
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Hey, good evening, Leslie. I just wanted to let you know, I appreciate all the information, but I wanted to throw some stuff out to you. About 6, 7 months ago, Pittsburgh had a major conference on the rails into Pittsburgh. They're thinking about doubling the tanker cars. So the
Yes.
single
That,
tanker
we meant to
cars.
mention that in my talk. Yeah.
Yes, they are going to do that. And with that, they're going to raise the bridges,
That's
the
already mostly
overpasses.
done.
Correct. And all the money
Yeah.
is out there for this. And also during this week, I just want to skip on to one more with Dave Atkins. There was a meeting with the committee looking into the accident in Ohio,
Mhm.
and they brought the CEO, Mr. Shaw, on, and they started asking him about the hours on the trains and how much, how many hours are on this. Well, he wasn't sure. But
Mhm.
the congressperson came back and explained that they came up with 10,000 hours of no maintenance. The longest one was 90,000 hours with no maintenance. And they were surprised that they would hear this. So I just want to bring this to your attention, and I thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you, Jeffrey. Thank you. That's all interesting
crazy.
news. And, fun fact, Alan Shaw actually got a raise this past year after the derailment, which is pretty disgusting if you ask me. But, the more power we build in having these conversations, the more we put pressure to make sure those things don't happen. So thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Saul. Please feel free to stick around for our next presentation. We have Matt Kelso with us today. Matt works for Fractracker. He makes numerous oil and gas related maps and performs data analysis. And he will be presenting their On the Wrong Track report today. So Matt, take it away.
Thanks. And if I can share my screen in just a moment,
Yes,
that
go
would be
ahead.
useful. But before I do that, I'm going to post some links in the chat here. And I'll talk through what we have here. So let me share the screen. Okay. Are we looking at a map? Sometimes I don't trust Zoom to show
Yes.
the things that I wanted to show. Okay, so I posted three links on the chat, and feel free to take a look at that. The first one of these is this story map about East Palestine. It's called Off the Rails, and I won't spend a lot of time looking through this one, but it has uh, my take on the story of what happened based on my research from it. There's a lot of different maps involved, and you know videos from news sources and things like that. So um, it's I think an interesting resource. If anybody hasn't seen it, it could be useful. The main thing that we wanted to talk about today was the on the wrong track report. Accompanying that, so there's a link to this in the chat as well. And along with that, I posted a map that goes along with it. And this is a dynamic map, so you can zoom into different areas. And the general gist of this map is it calculated the population based on census block data, and it calculated the population of people who live near rail lines, within 1 mile of rail lines. In this particular map, we wanted to focus on the fact that both rural and urban areas are affected by rail lines. In terms of area, you can see the rural areas are here in green. Obviously, there's quite a bit more rural area in the three-state area, which is Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia, than urban area. But of course, the urban areas are more densely populated. So we just wanted to focus on both of those. This map also contains schools and hospitals that are within that 1 mile zone. And so feel free to explore this at your leisure. And so let me talk about a few of the things that are on the report, and a few of the things we highlighted here. So I think this was mentioned earlier. There were over a from January 1st, 2020 to May 31st, 2023, there were 742 incidents that we were able to find documentation for in the three states that I mentioned. So again, that's Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. So it breaks it down by type. Some of these are a little the categories are a little loose. So like there's derailment, there's head-on collision, highway rail collision. One of these collisions can also result in a derailment. So it's kind of as far as which category is being counted, it might be a little bit loose in that regard. But that's a lot. I mean, I think in a period of around 3 years, that's a significant number of incidents in just these three states. So it's an average of over 4 rail incidents per week. And another one of our key findings was an estimated total of 14.3 million people live within 1 mile of rails in the study area, which is the three-state area. But that, of course, doesn't mean that if there's an incident that 14 million people are going to be affected. It's just 14 million people live within that 1 mile zone and are potentially able to be affected. There are some incidents where a major incident could affect people beyond 1 mile. I think the ultimate evacuation area for the supposed controlled blast in East Palestine was 2 miles. And in Loch Megantic, which was a major oil train disaster in Canada that killed dozens of people, the affected area was quite large there also. So there are some cases where 1 mile may not be enough, but that's the distance that we went with for a variety of reasons. 423 hospitals are located within this 1 mile area. Again, with more than 64,000 hospital beds, populations that are not easy to evacuate in a hurry if there's a major incident. So that's something to be mindful of. 12,791 schools, with more than 2.2 million children. And again, those large institutions are difficult to evacuate. And you can browse all of this stuff on the map here. You can, if you zoom into a certain distance, the schools, I'm going to turn off a couple of layers so that things are easier to see. If you zoom into a certain distance, the schools and hospitals will appear. The schools are green and hospitals are blue. So you can click on a random hospital in this 1 mile zone and say, okay, this is a child care center, and it had a population of 103 people. A population in this report includes the students plus the faculty and staff, as opposed to just the enrollment. Some of the schools have enrollment figures, which is just the students. So you can look at all these things. You can look at the rail lines themselves and find out the name of different segments, and you can look at the incidents. And so here's an incident. This particular incident was in April of 2021, and it was a highway rail collision, and it had 29 cars with hazardous materials. And then there's a narrative to go along with that, and it gives you the location. So you can use this this map to check on incidents that have happened in your area. And I think that there's a surprising amount. Okay, so this is the Keswick area here, Harmer, that we're looking at, right? So this is across the river from me. This was a couple of years ago. And they happen all over the place. It's really amazing how few of these we wind up hearing about. So a little bit more about the report. We break down the numbers by state, and as I said before, by rural area and urban area. So obviously the more populated states are going to have more people within that zone. So Pennsylvania had 7.4 million, Ohio had a little over 6 million, and West Virginia had 832,000. We also were able to determine the population under 18. The census data that we used at the block level is the most accurate census data that's available, but it's kind of limited in terms of what it has regarding population variables. So I know there are some census products that will tell you, different age ranges. In this case, this census product only told you the population that was above 18 or 18 or above. And so we were able to determine from that the population that was below 18. So we have that as well. Because this is such a big number, and because the potential impacts are significant, there's a very lengthy data and methods section. You can go into pretty possibly excruciating detail on how we went through this process here. But I think these are important things to disclose when you're putting numbers like this out there. So this is all there. And, you know, we talk about why we made some of the decisions that we did make along the way, and some of the process of working with this data. And so this is the general gist of what we have here. You know, we talk about, you know, earlier we mentioned the population of the affected areas, and we talk about the population in general of the 3 states and how that pairs with the numbers of affected people that we calculated. And we talk about the age, population, talk about schools and hospitals. There are a few visuals here as well, the affected land area. So that's, in a nutshell, that's a summary of our report here. Hopefully, uh, hopefully that's informative. If people have questions, you know, I'm willing to answer them. I don't know what the schedule is for that.
Yeah, yeah,
You want to do that
we'll
now,
open
or?
it up to questions now. So does anyone
Okay.
have any questions for Matt on the Fractracker report? All right. If not, that's okay. Thank you. And thank you, Matt, for coming and joining us today. Fractracker is a great partner, and I just put in a service request to get some of Matt's help here shortly. So they help us synthesize all of this data and make it visibly understandable. Something my communications major self can't quite do. So thank you, Matt. Appreciate you. And
Thank you.
now we are going to go to Dr. Lau for some plant updates around the Shell plant. I know we're going to drop some additional resources into the chat. So on top of, you know, the great work by Leslie and Saul and Matt, there are some additional resources that we want to make sure you guys have access to. So Phoebe will put those in the chat, and now I'll turn it over to Dr. Lau, and he'll let you know what's been going on at the Shell Plastics plant.
Hello, everybody. First thing I'd like to ask, give you guys an opportunity to report on anything that you might have seen before I give you a little bit of an update about what's going on. So anybody observe anything of interest or they felt was a problem or anything? No? Don't see any hands or anything? So the plant is still operating. It seems to be, we had the report last month. I showed you the different amounts of the 12 months moving, some of those. Talked to the DEP, and currently they are only exceeding their NOx NO2 amount. But one thing to keep in mind is that is measured in pounds given off over a period, a period of time, or average of 12. We get it in 12 months allotments, but we add it up for a whole year, or for 12 months. But that is the amount. What really affects one's health is the concentration. And so you could be under your allotment for the pounds that you could give off over 12 months, but you could have a high point somewhere there where the concentration was very high. So we need to keep that in mind, that we have the difference, and that's why we have the fence line monitoring, the cams, and we also take our own measurements, and also have the PAMs, the passive air monitor, because all those measure concentration, and therefore we can relate that back to what health effects might be involved. we did get word that there are 3 polymerization units at Shell, PE1, PE2, and PE3. They were finally able to get PE3 unit up and operating a couple of weeks ago. So now all the polymerization units are running. PE3 is to make high density polyethylene. So that's to make your shampoo bottles and your other different heavy weighted containers are usually made out of high density polyethylene. We have had word that since the when I was at the order, the COA back last May, they have now working on 6 violations since then, and the DEP is working out exactly what fines and what they're related to, and I haven't been able, I know the dates of the violations, but I haven't gotten from the DEP yet what those violations are actually related to. And the other news is, well, coming up, back in October, I think it is, or so, they're under their construction air permits, A, B, and C. They get 180 days to extend it. That 180 days is actually coming up the end of April. And I was asking the DEP, they have 30 days. They have to submit beforehand their request to extend those air permits. And where this raises some interest is the fact that Shell has also, or the DEP has requested from Shell that they have 160 or 120 days to submit for their Title V. So this is a more permanent document that lines out what they need to do as far as meeting their pollution levels and what they can emit and stuff like that. And so we're putting together a team of the different groups to get ready. It's going to be a long process. The question is how this is going to be determined, because the verbiage usually in the Clean Air Act or whatever says that you do a Title V once the plant is, and it's always in quotes, normal operations. And the question is Shell actually in normal operation when one of their officials actually say they won't be fully operating until 2025 to 2026. So, but they are raising their trigger level on their cams because they're in, now what do they call that? Actual facility operations. So again, another definition of what the actual facility operations are, but they're raising that. So as part of going along with the looking at not only the total amount in weight that they're emitting, Shell has had to complete stack testing where they actually measure the amount of material coming out of the different stacks. And through the work of EIP, we've been able to get those reports, and I have been going over those to actually figure out what concentrations they're measuring that are coming out of the stacks. So I think that's about it. If there's any questions about what's happening to the Shell plant, I'll be glad to answer it.
Thank you, Dr. Lau. I did see Peter had his hand up. Peter, did you still have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
A little bit. I can't view that much, but I have been looking outside of my front door and seeing the lights in the sky, sometimes of different colors, more or less in the same direction that I identify with the cracker plant, which as the crow flies, is about 2 1/8 miles from me. And I hear some of the noises when I can get my hearing aids in, but I don't have anything formal to report. But I also have checked the zip codes for Sewickley, and that seems to be in Chris DeLuzio's district. So that's a much earlier topic, but somebody can try to verify that. But I did find that his area does include a lot of northern Allegheny County as well as all of Beaver County. And I found that 5-digit zip code listed as being in his congressional district. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Peter. And I'm sorry to hear that the plant, is affecting you. I did see Gail shaking her head, so she confirmed that DeLuzio is a part of Sewickley's district. I see that Bob has his hand up. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, it's my understanding that low-level, long-term exposure, toxic sky dumping, is more potent than short-term, high levels of toxic smoke. And I was just wondering if we should get some medical people on here to talk about that, because I know the government and workplaces have that issued under OSHA and other protective laws for the workplaces. Yeah, the low level, long term, day and night is much more potent than just that puff of smoke coming out for 5 minutes that they're limited to. I'd like to take a little bit closer look at that, see that just what is coming out of there over a long period of time and how that would affect the general public just outside the fence line.
Thank you, Bob. And the good news is BCMAC does have a proposal in, fingers crossed, on a grant that would help us do some of that research, or at least start to do some of that research. So as usual, Bob's right on the money with what we need to be looking into.
Yeah, Bob, the only trouble, I agree with you. I don't know if is more dangerous, but yes, a lot of the industrial limits and everything are set for 8 hours or so exposure. And my thing with the Shell plant is the fact that it's giving off a possible 52 compounds of possible concern at various concentrations, 24/7, 365 days, and it's very hard. I don't think you'd get any toxicologist to be able to look at what the mixture of all those different things at various levels could have on, the effects of health and everybody. So my point is, whatever, not to try to figure out what the effects are, but we need to do everything to reduce those concentrations to minimize any possible effects that they might have synergistically or whatever that they being exposed to.
Thanks, Dr. Lau. Yeah, and I think I've learned after the train derailment that there just isn't enough studies on combined toxic exposure. Good news is I can report there is one that is ongoing in Beaver County. It's around the train derailment, but it's, I believe, a 30-mile radius. And that's with Dr. Galam of University of Southern California, San Diego. She is doing a study just on combined toxic exposure. And we might get some data out of that, around the Shell plant as well, since it would be within that radius. All right, I see Nora has her hand up. Go ahead, Nora.
Yeah, thank you so much. So Cliff, I was wondering about the monitoring information we're getting from the continuous air monitors. That's really interesting to look over. But when we heard a presentation last Friday from Eric Schaefer of the Environmental Integrity Project. He said something that I wanted to run by you and see how it syncs with the data in, for example, the CAM report that you have there. And namely, I understood him to say that monitoring is not only is monitoring obviously extremely important, but also that we need to have reports on an hourly basis. And at the same time that I think it takes some time for information to be collected and you know, for a report to come out. And I wondered if you could tell us what you think about that hourly basis, if you heard that the same way I did, and if it connects with what's happening at the Shell plant.
No, it's not happening at the Shell plant. And I have been going over the CAM data, and my concern has been with the fact that they're raising these trigger points. So I've been rereading the fence line monitor agreement and also Shell's quality program for that. And they indicate, I think they actually stated in that they would give the CAMS data within a day. And they are definitely not doing it within a day. At most, sometimes it's 3 days behind. But so yeah, the DEP monitors for some of the pollutants like nitrous oxide and nitrogen dioxide and ozone and things like that. Particles are reported on an hourly basis, but we don't have anything for VOCs. Even so, again, as Hilary brought up, that is a proposal in our environmental mitigation community fund project to hopefully fill that deficiency and get something that's within an hour or so of people can see just the basics of what's coming off the Shell plant.
Thanks, Cliff. I always say, you know, I feel bad saying, I promise we're working on it, but we really do. We have a lot of asks out. There's a lot of behind the scenes work going on. And, you know, Dr. Lau has done a lot of really great research to try to fill those gaps, Nora. So thank you. All right, Rachel, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I had a question, actually, just what Dr. Lau was talking about with the higher trigger levels for the continual air monitoring. So I just wanted to clarify that that means that they are allowing higher pollution levels before monitoring them, sort of normalizing a higher pollution level. Is that what's happening, and why would that be?
Yeah, it's written into the agreement, and again, EIP and Clean Air Councils, and maybe I need to talk to them to figure all out. But yeah, the trigger levels in each of the CAMs except for number 3 have a level at which it gets above that level, causes them to trigger a SUMA canister that then they collect for 30 minutes, and then within 24 hours they get it analyzed. And part of why they're allowed to raise the trigger levels, as far as I read the document, it's very much written in, I qualify as legalese, but if you look at once they get the SUMA canister and analyze the sample, they come back with the analysis that no issue at the plant caused the triggering of the PID. And so the best I can determine, issue means nothing abnormal in the running of the plant caused that to happen. Even though there are VOCs being emitted, that's just normal. In the document, they talk about what will normally come out of a stack or what will be the fugitive emissions and how many 100 ppms are allowed to come out of valves, stuff like that. That's just in the normal operations. So the way they have the triggers set, that if they have so many triggers that show that they're not related to what they classify as a true malfunction, then they get to raise the trigger level so that they're not measuring things that they consider are not events. If they have very few triggers, then the trigger levels are lowered so that they detect more possible events. And that's what they're